15 years. The economy took a really sharp turn shortly after this administration took office, and before I knew it, I was no longer able to support myself without making sure that I took money from the folks that were working for me, so I began having to downsize because I didn't have a choice. And eventually that company went away, and now here we are a few short years later, and I'm doing what I'm doing now. But, I think a lot of folks are doing it specifically for the reason that you mentioned. They don't want any affiliations with an administration that is this openly, this transparently corrupt, because that's the only promise he's kept. He promised that he was going to be one of the most open and transparent administrations ever. We just missed the part where it was going to be openly and transparently corrupt.
And speaking of corruption, we have the Billary campaign, which is now kind of interesting. That I guess she announced a month and a half ago that officially that she was running for she was a candidate for the presidency of the United States, and I guess she still hasn't had her official campaigning send-off rally that they're still going to have later this month. Now, a lot of people are talking about how she doesn't really want the nomination now, and that she's going through the motions because she has to, because she owes too many favors to too many people, so she has to make it look like that she's actually interested in running. But if that's it doesn't look like, if those people are correct in saying that she doesn't really want it now because of all the scandal. She doesn't really seem to be pretending very well that she wants it. Or do you think this is just the way she is, that she expects to have the nomination?
Well, I think for the folks that are saying that now because of all the scandals she doesn't really want it, again, they're not paying attention. She may realize that she's not going to be able to get it, but it doesn't have anything to do with her not wanting it. I think her behavior is a lot more akin to someone who really, really wants something and knows they're probably not going to get it, so now they're pouting. Because it reminds me of when my children tried to do things when they were younger and they got caught, and then because of that they weren't going to get to take a trip or something because they got grounded. It's the same general behavior. They're just like, she's over there, she's not engaging the press, she's not even talking about it anymore, and it's because she knows there's way too many things that are mounting on her. So I think she's hoping if she sits around quietly enough, since unfortunately the majority of the American population really doesn't pay attention to very many things political, that by the time the election rolls around, most of this will be old news again, and she can come out from hiding and run her campaign and see if she still has a shot. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know that one of my biggest fears, and this is tongue-in-cheek for a moment, but one of my biggest fears is, do we really want the first gentleman, who would be Bill Clinton, alone with the wives of heads of state? That doesn't seem like a good plan to me.
No, I'm going to have to agree with you on that one and say that is a little bit of a nightmare, having Bill Clinton back in the White House, being free. He would be setting the tone of what, the first gentleman would be doing, because inevitably we would have another female executive in the White House at some point in time. What does a guy do? There's our system is not set up to have a male first partner, if you will, with the female being the head of state. I guess we're going to have to take cues from some of the governors around the country, where on both sides of the political aisle, where governors are females and their husbands are well, in my state, for instance, we have we had back-to-back female governors, and I could not tell you even what either one of their husbands look like. I mean, that's how out of the picture that they are. Now, if you're talking about male governors, everybody knows what the first lady of the state looked like, but I could not tell you what the first gentleman, either the previous one or the current one, looks like. I barely even know their names. That's how much out of the picture they are. Is that what should be expected of the first gentleman in the White House? Because that isn't going to be Bill Clinton.
Well, I think honestly, again, and this isn't to sound all patriarchal for a moment, but the system was originally designed. That's why there's the title of the First Lady. Even in states, that's what the wife of the governor was called. And I mean, my state even has a female governor at this point. And actually, I got a chance to meet her at the Republican convention. She's not entirely popular in my state any longer because there's been too many things she's come out where she's kind of sounded like she was for Common Core. But I do have to admit, after getting to spend a few minutes with her off the record, she's a very nice person. I honestly don't even know if she is married. I hadn't bothered to look, and there's been no press about anything to do with her husband. So I think that is kind of the mindset is, female governors, husbands kind of just completely stay out of the picture because I don't think anybody knows what to do with them. And it's not like you want to see a picture of the first gentleman planting a garden in the White House.
Well, this is nothing unusual because even with Sarah Palin, as she called her husband Todd the first hunk, we really, even during the campaign, we did not see much of him. So, that may be, I don't know, maybe that would be for the best if he sort of like was invisible almost, but that wouldn't be Bill Clinton, do you think?
Oh, no. Bill Clinton will probably be stealing the spotlight from Hillary in every chance that he can. I'm sure there'll be scandals breaking about the parties that are going on in the White House when she's off at state functions, and not to mention the trouble he'll get into when he attends said state functions, because you know how that usually works, which is why I mentioned what I mentioned earlier. The heads of state are in one room, the spouses are in another, they hang out, they talk. I don't think with Bill there would be much talking involved. Not if he can get away with it anyway.
Yeah, he'll pretty much really take over the limelight, and people will be asking. And it may happen. God forbid if Hillary's actually elected, but it may happen where people are asking the president what her husband thinks, because they did ask her what her husband thought when she was Secretary of State, and she got rather indignant about it. And you know what? I have to give her props. I would be a little upset as well. I mean, go ahead and ask my husband what he thinks, but he's not the Secretary of State. I am. So I can understand that. But in most cases, people do not do that to the person who is in the elected or appointed office. They don't ask about their previously powerful spouse in either sex. It doesn't matter which, if they're male or female. Speaking of sex and changing of sexes, now this whole notion of, just changing gears a little bit, of Bruce Caitlyn Jenner. Now, I am sure you've been inundated by, on your social media feeds and your news feeds and everywhere else about this whole thing. And I have been, by a few people, I've been taken to task by saying that Bruce Caitlyn is not a hero and he's not very brave as far as the definition of the word brave goes, for doing this out in the open. In fact, I've taken it a step further by saying that men have been doing this transgender thing for decades now, and many of them do it in cities which are not in countries that are not very accepting of them, and they risk life and limb every time they step outside their own door, dressed as they are dressed. And some of them do get beat up pretty badly, and some of them even get killed simply because they are the quote-unquote tranny. I would say that they're a little bit more brave knowing that they might not come home that night versus Bruce, who nobody would pay attention to if he wasn't married to a Kardashian. I mean, are you getting this type of nonsense as well?
Yes. And honestly, I've been taken to task several times because I rarely call Jenner Caitlyn. Actually, most of the time when I refer to him, I now refer to, her as the Jenner formerly known as Bruce. My issue with all of this is, look, I don't care if he or she feels like she should have been born a woman. It really doesn't affect me. The thing that really upset me was when the story broke the other day that ESPN is honoring now Caitlyn with the Courage Award for doing what she has done. The thing that irritated me about that isn't the fact that they chose to honor her, but I'll get back to that in a second. It's the fact that there were two other people that were up for that award that actually have displayed genuine courage repeatedly. There was a 19-year-old young lady who was diagnosed with a terminal illness who continued to compete in her sport to the detriment of her health, and knowing that eventually it would cause her to pass much more quickly. She did it anyway, and now she has passed. And now there's another gentleman who did time in the military as a double amputee and with prosthetics is running marathons. Those two people were passed over for this award to honor the Jenner formerly known as Bruce. My issue with this isn't that he or she decides that now she wants to be a woman and feels that she should have been born that way. Okay, fine. Do what you got to do. Stop taking up the spotlight. There's more important things to focus on. But the fact that ESPN went for a complete and total ratings grab and passed over one of two people that honestly, legitimately deserves that award really ticks me off. And that's what I have to say about that, because I don't care. Bruce, Caitlin, whatever he or she wants to call herself now and whatever she wants to leave wear when she leaves the house does not affect me one iota. But when we have folks that legitimately displayed courage and they're passed over because ESPN's trying for a ratings grab, that upsets me.
You know, excuse me, I know that a lot of people think that this whole notion that coming out of the closet and as far as being a tranny is concerned is a brave notion, and that we need to respect these people and call, you know, if they're a man transitioning to a woman, we need to call them a girl, and if they're a female transitioning to a man, that we need to call her a boy. And my whole argument with this is has their DNA changed? Has their inside internal organ system changed? It hasn't, so they're still what they were born with. Now, have you read or heard about the professor? And I'm sorry, I don't have it up on my screens right now, but it just reminded me of this. There's a professor from Johns Hopkins University, and he's a very well read and learned and respected psychologist with over 125 peer-reviewed articles on psychiatry and psychology. Now, this guy is saying that although homosexuality itself is not necessarily a mental illness, but transgenderism, as he calls it, is. And he points to the fact of studies, numerous studies, that point out that the suicide rate for those after they have transformed to their new sex, quote unquote, the suicide rate for those people is much about 4 times higher than the subjects, the test subjects before their sex change. So my whole issue is that I that's why I say Bruce Caitlyn Jenner is that he's still a he. You know, he can change his outside and put on makeup and they can do photoshopping, but he's still a man. He's still a man. And I think that we're confusing our younger people and our younger set who's all about celebrity today. And let's face it, the millennials are all about celebrity. And I think that's kind of confusing a lot of the kids today about who they think that they are and who they think that they should be. And one of the things I have to ask you is, have you heard about the news about Brad Pitt?
Have I heard the news about Brad Pitt? No,
yeah,
I must say, honestly.
A couple of, again, just those things that just drop into my news feed every once in a while, because I am not about celebrity and I do not follow celebrities. But about 2 weeks ago, there was a news story or a news feature or whatever it was that said Brad Pitt was, they were accusing Brad Pitt of being a bisexual, and that Angelina Jolie did not look upon that as it being cheating, and that she welcomed it. Have we gone too far in worshiping celebrities, and that everybody has to be a celebrity, including now our politicians?
Oh, I think we've had an issue with celebrity worship for a very, very long time, and I think it's only gotten worse. I personally, I'm not sitting in judgment of those two, but if those statements were true, then they both have problems, because if you are spending time physically with someone else outside of your marriage, that is cheating, whether you're doing it with someone of the same sex or a different sex. And if that's not a problem for you, then that's entirely up to you. But the fact that you wish to broadcast that nationally and worldwide disturbs me just a little bit more, because how much more attention do these people need? Because I honestly, back to Bruce, Caitlyn, whatever, I think a lot of this has to do with attention. Think about it.